Does everything have a bright side to it? Of course. Doesn't always outweigh the negatives, but everything has a bright side to it. This makes happiness a choice. And here we say that the discipline of being happy is the ultimate discipline. With that said, welcome to the Ultimate Discipline Podcast, where we meet with people who are practitioners of this exact discipline, and we hear their cool stories of cultivating happiness through challenges in their life. I am your host, Shaun Greenspan. Let's get to it. What is going on, guys? I have Shaun Lake here, one of the founders of BUBS Naturals. I've been really stoked about this call because I like our working relationship, Shaun, because I came across BUBS MCT oil like before I started working with you guys. And I love when it happens like that. I was like, cool, I found a product I like. I don't take a lot of supplements. We could dive into that later. It's one of the 2 supplements I take every day. And then being able to work with you guys was just cool, right? And then, kind of hearing your story, hearing, how much you guys do give back, how, a little bit of the details behind the brand that we're going to get to is awesome. So really excited to get some time to get to know you more and share your story. And from what I do know about it, it is pretty damn cool. So thank you for coming on, and I'd love for you to give a little bit of a background about yourself pre-BUBS Naturals.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. And yes, this conversation is long overdue because when you and I get to know each other through marketing meetings and social media discussions, you get little glimpses of what's going on. Like I've learned more about your work background and kind of what gets you fired up. And I think to work successfully with any other brand or client or in anything you do in life, you want to feel that fire. And we feel that fire here every day, but sometimes sharing that can get lost in translation. So I'm stoked to have you guys on board. I feel like, from a social media and a communication standpoint, we're in the best hands we've been in a long time. So hats off on that one. My background. Well, let's go with unconventional as probably the best way to put it. I grew up in a little town in Massachusetts. And I was always kind of that classic middle child of older brother, younger sister, sandwich in the middle, trying to get attention, trying to please everyone. Yet I had the rebel streak in me. Like it was in the 80s. I'm a little bit older than you are. And growing up in the 80s was like I discovered skateboarding. It was in Massachusetts, and not the easiest place to be have it be snowing half the year and some hard winters, and you're just living to get outdoors and do this sport that almost no one was doing. There was 6 skateboarders in my high school. And then I grew up skiing in the winters, and that turned into, during my high school years, this discovery of this brand new sport called snowboarding. So while I'm in high school and I'm supposed to be applying to college and getting ready for those next chapters of my life, all I can dream about is getting sideways on a skateboard or a snowboard. And I always just gravitated towards individual sports, swimming, track over, say, football or basketball or some of those bigger ones. I always enjoyed individual effort. And I think part of that was because I was a little bit of a misfit growing up, didn't quite fit into all the social cliques. And when I did, the cliques that I fell into were kind of those guys that were also, playing hacky sack and we're just marching to a slightly different drum beat. And back then, you stood out in the way that you were doing things differently. You're listening to punk rock music, you're listening to, alt rock, and the stuff that's so common now and it's all a big melting pot just wasn't like that back then. So it really, stood out a lot. And you really find your identity during those years. And then, those are your shaping years, your teenage years. I went to college because I was supposed to. And after my freshman year, I just knew I was not applying myself. I was 1 foot out the door at all times because I was just dreaming about this other life of adventure. And my best buddy during high school is this guy, Glenn Doherty. And Glenn and I were wired the exact same. He had an older brother. He had a younger sister. He was thinking about adventure. So we started talking that summer, and he'd gone off to school as well. And we're both just like, we should drop out of college and go become professional athletes. Like, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. And he's like, he was a great skier. So he's like, I want to become a pro skier. I want to do what Glenn Plake does and like Scott Schmidt and like all these hot shot skiers. And I was like, yeah, I want to go become a professional snowboarder. I want to do what Andy Hetzel and Sean Palmer do. And like these Craig Kelly, like these huge names that I idolized and looked up to. And that was it. Like, he hatched a plan. We were going to go to the mountains. We ended up settling on Snowbird in Utah, take a year off of college and just see what happens. And that turned into 5 years of chasing the snow and chasing these dreams. And all of our friends graduated from college. Because keep in mind, like, you know, Massachusetts, right? It's pretty buttoned up. You go to college, you get your degree, you get a job, you get married, you have kids. Like, you know, you follow the protocol. You do the thing. And then you got the 2 black sheep that are over and, you know, going like, "Well, we kinda see things a little differently." So Glenn and I, you know, shipped out to Utah. We actually moved there with my older brother. He took a semester off of college, or, you know, that block of time. He went back to school and you know, followed the protocol, but Glenn and I, we had that adventure itch. So that led to endless adventures for those years, during which I got really lucky. And you know, followed my dream and ended up getting some endorsements for snowboarding and started getting paid. So by the time I was 24, turning 25, I was living the dream. I was like, dude, I'm a professional snowboarder. I get paid like $500 a month. This is awesome. And keep in mind, back then, I felt like that was hot shit. It wasn't like today's standards of 6-figure salaries. I think my best year in snowboarding was probably like, you know, 20 grand. And I was like, this is amazing. I'm so rich. Um, and then Glenn was just trying to carve it out as a skier and like just make his impact. But that was in the 1990s and it wasn't easy being a skier. So he ends up coming to me one day and he's like, you know, if I haven't made it as a pro skier by the time I turn 25, I want to join the Navy and become a Navy SEAL. I'm like, what? So my best buddy, we go through that whole next year and he ends up joining the Navy, taking off to basic training, going through BUDS and becoming a Navy SEAL. So I literally drove him to the Navy recruiter, watched him sign his life away, took off to basic. A year later, I'm going to his BUDS graduation with a bunch of ski bums. Like, we're all showing up down in Coronado on the grinder with, you know, disheveled hair and a bunch of punk rockers. And there's Glenn, you know, getting pinned up there, like, you know, looking at us, like shaking his head, like, oh man. And I was really excited during that chapter for myself because I was getting paid to snowboard. I could travel the world. I was having those adventures that I had sought, going to Alaska, going to Europe, going to New Zealand, like these amazing places that I would never have gone if I just went to college. They just, you know, those opportunities wouldn't have been there. So it was really cool. And then my best buddy is in the Navy, becomes a SEAL. Like, it's a really interesting dynamic because every time he was home in between jobs, he'd fly out to Utah and go skiing with us. And we'd be like, what's it like, man? That's crazy. Um, and then I would, you know, I kind of looked at life at the same time. I said, you know, I can't do this forever. I should go back to school and get my degree. So I carved out a little path for myself to go to the University of Utah, summer semester, fall semester, use my money from snowboarding to pay for school. Newsflash, anyone young out there that has a dream of doing things that kind of buck the system, parents don't usually pay for college on round 2. You might be on your own. So just be warned that you're on your own. And yeah, I end up wrapping up my snowboarding, you know, kind of career life, if you will, turning 30, got my degree. And then my best buddy's living down in Coronado in San Diego. And I end up getting recruited out of college by Burton Snowboards, which is like the biggest snowboard brand, to work with a young kid named Shaun White. And like, oh, we need you to move to Encinitas, California, near Carlsbad. And you're going to work with Shaun and the other professional snowboarders that are all based in San Diego. And that's going to be what you do. And the job offer was like more money than I'd ever made ever in my life, like by like 3x. I was like, oh my God, like I can't say no to this. So I literally packed up my bags and I didn't think I would ever work in snowboarding. I thought I was going to join the State Department and I was going to become, work in civil service. I thought I was going to work in government. I got a degree in political science. I was always fascinated by government and how that works. And next thing you know, I am Shaun's team manager, and we're, rallying around between X Games and the US Open and all the snowboarding events. And it was an awesome shift. And that led me into a career in the action sports industry, which I spent a decade working with DC Shoes. I was their director of marketing for 6 years. I launched their whole snowboard program, which was a very passionate project to be involved in. The guy who hired me was a legend in action sports named Ken Block. He's probably more famous now as a race car driver, and for the legacy that he left behind with his Gymkhana videos. If you ever just Google Gymkhana, Ken, I learned so much from him over the time I worked with him. So I've always had these amazing mentors and inspirational people around me. Glenn, very notably through huge chapters of my life. Ken, for the time I worked with him. Eric Koch, guys at Burton Snowboards. Like you got to learn through every chapter that you're in. And I was really fortunate in life to be surrounded by some good iron, sharpening some iron. So grateful for that. And it brought me to San Diego where my best buddy was. So it was like we got the band back together. So I dropped anchor in San Diego. That was back in '02. I've been here ever since. It's a great place to call home. I kind of traded the mountain lifestyle for a surf lifestyle. So I still had that connection to nature, which is super important to me. It's very important to our brand. And that was something that was essential with Glenn too. It was like, hey man, we do the things we do to get outside and have a great time. And that's always been central in my life. So yeah, man, I, worked in action sports forever. I jumped into a consulting agency after my time at DC had wrapped up. And along the way, just met so many great people from, just being around the X Games for, almost a decade and all those legends of action sports. And then I started working with Converse shoes. And eventually that led me down a very different path, because in the fall of 2012 on 9/11, you might remember the terrorist attacks of Benghazi on 9/11 in Libya. My best buddy died. And all of a sudden, like my buddy Glenn, who was like my roommate, he was, my absolute, just brother in life's adventures, was killed saving all those Americans over in Benghazi, Libya. So if you ever saw the movie 13 Hours, you know a little bit about his journey. And I was Glenn's listed next of kin on his military paperwork. I was Glenn's executor of his estate. So we kind of had this joking rule internally. Like, we're like, hey, man, you get to take care of all my crap if I die. And I was like, yeah, well, you get all my crap. And we signed ourselves. And, you get, whoever. We were both like laughing because, like, hey, we're immortal. We'll never die. And then he did. So it was a very public event. We're talking like national news stations showing up at my doorstep. President Obama, Hillary Clinton, all talking about it. And it was an absolute whirlwind. And it sent my life in a very different direction from what had been a fairly carefree lifestyle into something that was more about legacy. And it was more about concepts like paying it forward and keeping Glenn's memory alive. Like this guy that stood for so many good things that we wanted to celebrate. His family, his friends, myself, and I was kind of put in a role to be the centerpiece of that. So that was, the fall of 2012. Glenn's sister, myself, a couple high school friends started the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation to help special operators transition from active duty to civilian life. That was like early 2013. And I had a whole set of adventures, I would say, and kind of life lessons around Glenn's relationship with the Central Intelligence Agency. So kind of backfilling that in, the reason Glenn was in Libya was he was doing security work for the CIA. He was in a branch called the GRS, which was basically in charge of security for a lot of the CIA intelligence officers. And he responded to the terror attacks to save all those Americans that were down in Benghazi. So he flew down from Tripoli to Benghazi to save everyone. And there was a whole set of, issues with the post-mortem of that and Glenn's paperwork and all that stuff. And then a few years goes by and there's a movie called 13 Hours that comes out, and it's a Michael Bay movie, and it's explosions and it's, all this action and adventure. And one of the central themes in there is that Tyrone Woods, the other Navy SEAL, and Glenn get killed on that rooftop. And that was a pretty surreal experience to go through. Meeting Michael Bay after he makes the movie, having a couple of choice words for him on how he could have respected Glenn's legacy a little bit better. But that's, just more of a personal aside. But I never thought in a million years I'd meet Michael Bay. So there's that. And then, that launched me into a very unexpected journey into the nutrition space and the dietary supplement space.
Man, you've lived a couple lifetimes, man. You really have, and you don't look a day over 20 with that good skin. It might be the collagen. No,
Oh man, look at you buttered me up like that.
just getting you going. But seriously, I really appreciate you diving into all that, and I'll tell you, um, something that I really respect from the BUBS team, which is obviously, you and TJ at the helm, is that pay it forward mentality. And I'll tell you two separate occasions where before we started working, where this like lit up for me. Um, and the first was I got my first bag of MCT oil. And I saw
That
in
would
the
have been
box
a couple years ago, right?
years ago. Now this is actually year and a half or 2 years ago, not that long
Yep.
ago.
Yep. 2 years ago. Cool. That makes sense.
And I see 10% goes to charity.
Yep.
And so something when I started this company, my super quick version of your story was I came out of school. Going into college, I was like, I just wanted to be a professional athlete, right? That didn't really look like the route. I stuck it out, but my thought was like, I'm just going to take 6 classes a semester, graduate in 2.5 or 3 years, and just like get her over with. Got a job in marketing and realized, hey, I really do enjoy business and like creative concepts like around campaigns, but like I don't like power tools. We're like we're taking metal from China and shipping it over here to build houses. Like, and all I wanted to do was go in the mountains. I would spend my time at work writing business plans about how I was going to take fourth graders on backpacking trips into the woods and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm destroying the woods. Like, fuck this. I'm out. So I started a new company, and it was to help fitness and wellness companies expand their impact on the world. And a requirement on our website was they had to have an environmental mission, right? And so back when I was the whole company and I was building my website, Googling how to like build the website, our like case studies wouldn't say, oh, we drove ROI up, blah, blah, blah. It was like for Ombra sunglasses, we helped them plant 250 trees in South America. Next case
There you
study,
go.
right? And like stuff like that. And it was cool. So when I saw this, I was like, damn, like these guys really do care. Like you don't see 10% a lot.
Yeah.
Then,
Well,
then,
there's a
then
reason for that too. Part of it's out of naivety, which now we drew our sword, so we're sticking with it. We didn't realize how hard that actually is to do.
yeah,
But also, like, if you believe in something and you're fired up, kind of like what we talked about at the very beginning of talking here today, like it gets you motivated. I measure success by how much we can give. When I can write a check to protect our winners, right? That's an awesome environmental cause for the ski snowboard world around climate change and awareness. Like Glenn was a lifelong skier. I'm a lifelong snowboarder. I can feel so happy knowing that. And if you can help veteran causes along the way, Glenn's foundation does real solid work. The Honor Foundation does real solid work for our veteran communities. To be a part of that, to be energized is like, it's worth getting out of bed in the morning. It's worth, dealing with all the crap that being a young company has to deal with along the way. Like every hurdle that you have is worth jumping over. It's worth climbing those mountains over because you feel that much better. Like your criteria for your client base, companies you want to work with and help scale and grow, has a direct impact, or maybe an indirect impact on how they can follow their heart and their mission and their why. That's freaking commendable.
Yeah. You said it with the why, right? Like, I actually have a buddy who's staying with us right now that got me motivated to run my first 100-mile ultra marathon. And, there's all sorts of like training and stuff that goes into it. And one of the big things he said was, he's like, you better understand your why, because there's going to be a time you're on mile 85, your feet are bleeding, you're blistering, like everything sucks. And like, that is gonna, if you don't have a good why, like that's gonna beat you,
You'd
and
be out. You'd be totally out. But if you have a
yeah.
good why, oh man, it's
Yeah.
on. Like you
Well,
got it.
that's why. So a little tangent here, but so I started the company with that vision, like any other company, ups and downs for the first 6 months, 12 months. And it was kind of more like, hey, that's a nice to have, but like I just need to keep the lights on, right? So I was taking anyone, and then I realized I would have clients that weren't completely aligned, right? And I was out of integrity with myself. And even if these clients, there's one in particular in my brain that was 3 times bigger of a profit generator, not just revenue, like profit, than anyone else. And like when I was working with them, I was trying to rush the work. And then there was this other client that like was paying me like peanuts, but like, dude, they were dialed in. I was friends with the owner, like, and I saw how much like she was putting into it. And it would be like Friday night and be like, oh no, guys, I can't hang. I got to like knock this project out. And I wasn't like, people are like, oh damn, you have to work late. I was like, it's not really work. Like, it's like I'm just, kind of doing
It's
my
funny.
thing. Like,
You're right. It doesn't feel like work sometimes, even when you're going through like a bunch of stuff. But like, how many people put their kids to bed? Maybe not appropriate for you because you don't have kids yet, but I've got 2 young kids, put them to bed, and like I don't mind checking email afterwards. I'm very mindful of my time with them and try and separate the two, but like, dude, it's good to like when you're motivated and you're like you wake up in the
yeah,
morning and you do whatever your morning ritual and routine is, and then you're like you're fired up. I want to get after it. I want to go
hell
get this.
yeah.
It's a good feeling, and that's important.
It's been until about 2 years ago that I started really feeling that, and just like excited to do it. And now we could go down a tangent. There's probably a fine line there with us being like psychologically addicted to work, but that's probably a whole other
That would be an
conversation.
entire topic that my wife would like to unpack.
Yeah, we'll have
And
her
I'm just
on.
going to acknowledge it right now. But like the title of this podcast is the happiness discipline. And if your work, this thing that is going to consume 8 hours a day or more, 5+ days a week, is a large part of your alert awake time, it really helps if you feel good about what you do, or you're
Yeah,
good at what you do, or you understand the ends that you're trying to achieve professionally, personally, and you can
yeah,
make peace with that. Because, I've got a phenomenal brother in law, and he doesn't love what he does in investment banking, but he knows that what he does provides really well for his family and that there's an end game with it. And that's what keeps him going to work and putting his best foot forward and charging it. And you have to find that in your happiness and be disciplined about it. I'm blessed in a lot of ways. Like I got to be a snowboarder, right? I loved what I did. It made me happy.
yeah,
And even through all the injuries and trials and ups and downs, it was always worth it. And then I got to work in the industry side and see the mechanics behind what that's all about. And that was awesome. And it was educational. And I learned a ton. And, it was very fulfilling. Now I get to celebrate my best friend's legacy and apply the best ethos that he lived by and apply it in our brand. I get to take this guy who stood for self improvement above all, and I mean fitness, reading books, education, and embody that through a product line. And this guy who always was helping others. Literally, Shaun, he was the dude who would help you move your couch when no one else would help you and move all your furniture, which is the shittiest job anyone could ever do. He'd show up and do it. He'd give you a hard time about it, but he'd always be there. And you get the help you need. You get this person who's reliable, stable, they show up. So
Yeah.
we wanted to embody all of that in the brand. So we give 10% of profits to charitable causes in Glenn's name, like veteran causes driving value, because that's what was important to Glenn. And the integrity and quality of our product line had to match that. That's why you see things like our NSF for Sport logo across, all of our hydration products, all of the collagen line. That's why you see the Whole30 approved partnership on collagen and the creamer line and our electrolytes. Like, I want these validation marks that are really hard to come by, that you can't just buy your way into, with integrity, to showcase that quality to a customer base that is meant to exemplify who Bub was, who Glenn was. And getting to do that every day is it's worth lacing up the shoes every time.
That's so
I get
cool,
fired up
man.
right now just thinking about it.
Dude, that's living, right? It's like, that's it, I love things that feel good and are good for business, right? Because like we all wear different hats, and like you and me both have this like passionate like side towards life that we're talking about. And we're both like businessmen, and like what you're talking about, it's like, hey, like I'm literally stoked to like go make this happen, go make better products, like like actually not just like market, sales, market like the mission behind it, and like you're building like a community, and even
Yeah.
if it's you really are building a community of people, and that's super super cool.
And it
um
takes time. It doesn't happen, overnight. It's not like, oh, we got $10 million in seed round and we're going to run a bunch of Facebook ads and we're going to blow up overnight. And then this is the long game. The long game is be consistent with your quality, be consistent with what product you're putting out there, what messaging you have. It's all long game stuff. It does, it's not built overnight with some like flash in the pan, Instagram influencer. It's built by making sure that the content's like, what I have in here, this stuff right here has to deliver every time. You need to have the results. I need to solve your problems, your hair problems, your skin problems, your joint problems, your muscle problems, whatever problems you're experiencing. I need to address those really well. And the quality of the product, the integrity of the product has to do that. And if you can deliver on that as a foundation, you're authentically putting the best product out there, third party tested, validated, great flavor profile, amazing solubility, all the check marks. Okay, cool. Now let's go build the brand. Let's talk to people about who Glenn was, who Bub was, why he's important, and why you can make a difference in the quality of your own life and helping others along the way. I mean, that juice is worth the squeeze.
Hell yeah, man. um let me bring it down to a tactical level for a second, because I'm getting a little obsessed with reading labels on anything with a label, and anything with a label. I'm trying to eat
Got a
stuff that doesn't
label.
have a label. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, right. I'm trying to eat stuff that doesn't always have a label on it, but it seems like every company is cutting corners, right? I'm happy. I'm really happy to say, like, I wouldn't just say this, but like I really don't think you guys are. Like, I wouldn't take it just because we're working together. I'm not going to put something in my body. You guys are the collagen I use. You guys are the MCT oil I use, and the electrolytes. Um, what tell me a little bit about that process. I don't think a lot of people know what sourcing's like, and like tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about that process and maybe why it is so hard to avoid certain things.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about collagen as a first example. We'll jump to some of the other products. And I think this is super important for anyone that's going to push, purchase on Amazon, grab something off a store shelf at, Whole Foods, Sprouts, or Ralph's, or wherever you're getting your groceries from. What's on that label? And then what's in the actual product. So for us, when we got started, I went out, like, let's start with why we started the brand. I had a transformative experience taking collagen. It absolutely changed my life. Like, I'm 52 years old. I was 44 turning 45. I had a 1-year-old son at the time, and I was busted. We're talking snowboarding, mountain biking, surfing, skateboarding, all the action sports, impact sports, over a decade of CrossFit. And you know how that'll provide some wear and tear. A lot of running and just getting out of bed, going through the motions. Everything was starting to really hurt. So here I am, like right on the cusp. I'm turning 45 and I'm achy as all hell, but I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to live with pain. I'm going to live with discomfort. My wife comes home from work one day, and Heather, my wife, she's a newscaster, works for Fox here in San Diego, and is always got her finger on the pulse on good nutrition habits, good eating habits, good just things happening culturally. I'm very blessed to have her in my life because she will always keep me posted on the latest Taylor Swift, happenings. So I'm up to speed. And she comes home one day and she's got a jar of collagen. And she's like, I read about this on a blog. It was on you know, some feed, and you got to take this stuff. And I'm like, why? Like, collagen? What the heck's this stuff? And she says, it's going to affect your achy knees. Like, you sound like wrinkled up newspaper when you climb up a flight of stairs. Take this, take it every day. That's what the, article said, and see what it does for you. And here I am eating clean. We got a young kid. Like, we're not going out. We're not doing a bunch of stuff. I have one data point to add into my life, this white powder called collagen. So I put a scoop in my coffee in the morning because that's what she told me to do. And I take it. And then the next day and the next day and the next day. About 3 weeks goes by. And for the first time in my life, taking all these different supplements that I'd tried over the years, branched chain aminos, creatine, whey protein, I actually physically noticed a difference. My fingernails were growing. And as a dude, you notice that because I'm like, where are the nail clippers? And about a week or so later, I needed a haircut. And Shaun, I'm looking at the jar and I'm like, oh, it says right on there, hair, skin, nails. And it also said joint health. So that's why I was keeping in. But I'm like, if my fingernails are growing and my hair is growing, I need a haircut. And I just got a haircut. Something's happening here. So I bought another jar, and 2 months in, I'm like almost 8 weeks in on this. I'll never forget. I get out of bed. I'm moving around the house, doing all our stuff. We had to fly to Boston. So we got a 1-year-old kid and all the crap that comes along with carting a 1-year-old kid across the country.
Yeah.
Get on the airplane, fly for 5.5 hours to Boston. We get off the airplane. I'm grabbing the backpacks and the things and all this. And we're marching down Logan Airport in Boston. And I turn to Heather and I say, oh my God, I feel great. And she's like, oh, that's nice, dear. I'm like, no. You don't understand. Like, I feel awesome. Like, what is in that stuff you had me take? Like, what is in this? She's like, the collagen? I'm like, I need more of it. And that was it. Like, I knew that was the thing. My joints felt great. I got up off an airplane. I'm 6'2". We're sitting in the back of the plane, and I didn't have to like massage my knees or take some time or stretch. I like jumped up and went, and like, I feel great. That is transformative. I mean, in every sense of the word. Like, I thought, because I had a couple years of data under my belt, that my life was going to hurt more and more and more as I kept going. And that was just it. That was just what I was meant to go through. And all of a sudden I had this cow powder, this collagen powder that told me otherwise. So I became obsessed with learning more about it. What are these amino acids that are in it? What do they do for the body? And I didn't know a lot. I just knew enough to know that I was going to keep taking it. And I would tell everyone I knew, especially in my age group, I was like, hey man, you over the age of 25? You need collagen. And I read more and more about it. This is it's 2017. So it was early in its popularity curve. Like, it was just kicking up. A couple months later, my business partner, TJ, who you've met a bunch of times, comes over to the house. He's got 15 years of e-commerce background behind him. And he looks at me and he says, we're pitching a work project. He looks at me and he's like, oh, you take collagen? Like, he sees the jar on the counter and I'm like, yeah, man. He's like, oh, we should start a company. That's a fast growing product on Amazon. Like, I'm seeing the trend analysis. And I'm like, dude, I got a 1-year-old behind me. You're crazy. And so I'm like, but what would a company look like? Like, we're sitting here talking shop. Like, let's talk shop. So inside of like a 2-minute conversation, we look at each other and we're like, well, what would a company look like? What would a brand look like to you? And we both looked at each other at the exact same time. We said, well, if we ever did start a company, we'd have to do something cool for charity. That was it. Opening line. Light bulb goes off in my head. And I go, hey, man, I know the charity. It's got to be Glenn's charity. And Glenn's call sign in the Navy was Bub. So we'll name the company BUBS Naturals as a tribute to Glenn and his way of life. This guy that stood for self-improvement, and he was always helping others. And that was it, man. It was like lightning in a bottle. I called Glenn's teammates in the teams, in SEALs. I was like, hey, Mikey, Clint, Shane, what do you guys think of this? Is this a crazy idea? And they were all like, Glenn would kick your ass if you didn't do this. You got to do it. And that was it, man. So we launched out. So now back to the labels, back to the product.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to put anything in a jar that didn't represent who Glenn was and what he stands for and what he stood for. So it was all about quality and integrity. So I set out on this path, bought every single brand I could off of Amazon, bought, like everything I could get my hands on. And I lined up all these glasses of water, like just tap water. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to pour collagen in each of these and I'm going to figure out which brand has the best product. And I just went up and down, me, my wife, my friends, like I made everyone do it and settled on what we thought was the best that we could get. Now, it's not like I'm going to call this company up and figure out how they make their collagen. That was just like a starting point. And then I had to learn the back end of the industry. And I ended up talking to like everybody that I know. And I ended up having one friend, a guy named Tim Infin, who I'll forever be grateful for giving me one simple tip. Oh, you got to go to this, this supplier trade show that happens. And it just happened to be a few weeks from when I talked to him. And you just go in there and walk the show and you're going to get this guide and it's all broken out by which product categories and go shopping, man. Just go hunt. And so I walked this trade show. And I mean, all the suppliers of every vitamin, every nutrition supplement, every probiotic, every fish oil, anything you get in your natural food section, were all at this trade show. And not the brands, the suppliers.
The supplier.
So I went around and I met with all these different collagen suppliers. And I sniffed them out. I would like go up to one. I'd be like, give me a sample. And I'd stick my nose and I could smell the cow hide. And I'm like, nope, you're out. On to the next one. Nope, you're out. And then on one of them, I'll never forget, I literally had a bottle of water and I like poured the collagen into a bottle of water just to see how it would dissipate and dissolve into the water. And it was a clumpy, lumpy block. And I'm like, you're out. And I'm on my way out of the show. And I'm literally walking out and I see one last supplier. I didn't even know they were a collagen supplier. Just the booth kind of impressed me. And they had a little light on it from the state of Massachusetts, like a little map. And I was like, oh my God, people from Massachusetts are here. I'm going to go walk up and say hi to them. Like, I'm just jabby. TJ is like, dude, let's go. Like, we've been on our feet for 12 hours. Like, let's get the hell out of here. And I go up and I chat this group up. And I'm like, oh my God, what do you guys make? And they're like, well, we're a gelatin collagen company. Like we work in cow products. I'm like, wait, what? Well, you guys had this sign from Massachusetts. And they're like, oh, that's where one of our gelatin plants is. I'm like, no way. Small talk leads to, do you guys make collagen peptides? Yes. What's your quality like? Oh, you're going to love our quality. And a conversation turned to samples turned to R&D. And next thing you know, we have the best collagen you can get on the planet. And I put my reputation on that one. I mean, it's a somewhat of a subjective statement, but amino acid profile, flavor, solubility, the things that matter if you're going to use a product, does it taste good? Or if it's unflavored, does it taste like nothing? And does it work? Like, is it going to clump up? Because if it clumps, you're not going to use it again. You'll buy it once and you're going to walk away and be like, I'm done with this. But if it really does its job, good amino acid profile, and it's easy to use, performance, you're going to use it, man. And that was it. Like, we have been with the same supplier since day one, and it's been awesome. And I like saying things like sustainably sourced. Now, for collagen, that means Are we sourcing from the Amazon rainforest? No. We're sourced from northern Uruguay and southern Brazil. Like we're 1,000+ miles away from what I would consider to be a major environmental disaster. And I don't want any part of that. I love doing business with Brazil. I love doing business with, with that part of the world because that's where the cattle industry is centralized. But I don't want to be in a troubled zone if I can help it. So we're really happy about that. That just ticks a good kind of personal brand box, and the quality's there, and that's it. And then once we knew we had the quality, I knew that customers weren't going to just take my word for it. Hey, I'm the guy who like runs this company. I wanted to go out for third party accreditation. Enter chasing down the whole 30 approved group and chasing after NSF for sport, which isn't a chase. NSF for sport's a nonprofit. You submit your product for certification and it's a pass or fail scenario. You either have the integrity and quality and label claims and can make them, or you can't. And that's where I think our industry is really murky. There's not a lot of brands that are willing to put their reputation on the line with accredited third party testing. And NSF for sport is the highest standard that you can get. And it's a standard that's used by the US Olympic team, Major League Baseball, the National Football League, like all the sports stuff. But all it really boils down to from a consumer standpoint is this clean label? Is there a bunch of crap in there? And if you see NSF for sport on there, the answer is no, you're good to go.
Yeah.
So I
That's
get all fired up about that too.
dude. You have you get these like visceral sensations that you're very your memory is very like photographic. I could see you like walking through this experience, but it's because it's awesome, man. It's like I'll tell you like a little metaphor of a story and tell me if you kind of like get it. But we're recording this on what, Jan 12th, New Year. Everyone's got their New Year goals. And one of my New Year goals is I'm gonna write and publish a book called The Happiness Discipline this year. And I
Nice.
called one of my friends who is, kind of a big time influencer. We were just talking about actually planning like ultra marathon together. And he's like, "Oh, dude, what's your goal this year?" I said, "Write and publish a book." He said, "Get out of here, me too." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Why do you want to do it?" And he goes, "I want to give people a deeper understanding about myself. And what's cool is I have these 8 stories, and I'm just going to do like 10-minute voice notes on each one, send it to a ghostwriter, and the book's going to be written in like a month." And I was like, "Cool, that's one way to do it. No harm, no foul." And then he was like, "What do you mean? Like, why are you writing the book?" I was like, "I'm writing the book because I want to write a book." You know what I mean? Like you built this business. You could have just been like, "Hey, like, let me just see your cost, your unit, like pricing, like your delivery, your lead time, all that stuff, and just like knocked it out. And hey, maybe you would make 10% more, and cool." But like by you like taking all that time to like dive in and like really like you just created a memory. Again, that's where like you have a sustainable advantage over anyone else making collagen because that wasn't work to you. The whole time you're like, I need to serve Glenn, I need to serve Bub, right? Like by getting the best product. And in doing so, you also create this amazing memory. And the reason like this gets me fired up is like the happiness discipline, right? It's all about working on yourself and building a set of disciplines so you're manufacturing consistent high levels of energy and optimism, which to me is how I define happiness. And a
Yeah.
lot of people are like, "Oh, like, dude, you're always like," when I say people, I'll call it out. Family members are always like, "Dude, you're always like working on yourself. Like, why don't you ever like chill?" I'm like, "Dude, like this isn't work." Like they look like when I say like, "Oh, I'm gonna go take 20 minutes and journal, kind of reflect on like the last week." Like, "Oh, you just worked a long day. Like, why are you doing that?" I was like, what does one have to do with the other? And that's what my goal from this podcast, and your story just lined it up so freaking well, was I just want people to reframe their outlook on a lot of things in life to like what is work and what isn't work. Because
Yeah.
calling something work, like I don't know what the definition of it is, but I almost feel like calling something work like has like an inevitable negative connotation to it. Like, again, like
Yeah,
there's only,
I'll give you a juxtapose on that. Relationships are work.
yeah,
They're not always easy. It doesn't always just flow, but the work is worth it. The work can be painful, but the outcome is meant to be beautiful. It's meant to be something that you can look back on and enjoy. So I hear you. And I agree with you. I guess I do look at it and say, well, relationships are work. Kids are
yeah,
work.
for
But it's
sure.
the right kind of work. There's a right kind of satisfaction and bucket filling that comes from that. And I mean, you know it because there are some days and in anything where you just want to hit your head against a wall, but it's worth it to get up the next day and do it again. And that's, personal, professional, so I think again, kind of happiness, discipline, that reframing work as something that, is not just necessary, but fulfilling.
Yeah.
And that's genetic to me. Like that's biological. Like if you
And
told me I was never going to have to work another day in my life, like, oh, you're independently wealthy, you never have to work another day in your life, I'd be cool. What am I going to go work on next?
yeah, right. It's like it's funny. Well, I just Googled the definition of work. There's two, and it's funny because I agree with the first, not the second. One, an activity involving mental or physical effort done in order to achieve a purpose or result. Get it? That's how I would define work. The
Yes.
second is a task a person has to do. That is where I think, it's like either don't call it work like that I just want to say like that's like that has to do as a negative connotation. So either cool, call like my work like creating a business, right?
Yeah.
Or just like take that out of there. Um and yeah, it's super interesting. The reframe is I think one of the keys to life, and that's why building discipline to be able to keep that reframe top of mind every time you sit down in front of the laptop,
Yep.
every time you put your kids to bed and you already woke up at 4 a.m. to work out and you want to or you have to go check email, right? Like it's a discipline, it's a muscle that we're building.
Yep. Absolutely. That's a good way of framing it. And I mean, like your buddy's motivation for writing a book. He doesn't want to write a book. He wants to tell the story. That's a difference. You want to write a book. Like you want to take the time and put pen to pages and test your prose and see how you can craft your messaging. He wants to just take these stories in his head that are probably amazing and awesome and just get them out there, record it on audio, and then have someone else turn it into actual pages. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a totally different approach. And depending where you are in life, you choose one or you choose the
Yeah.
other. Like I wouldn't judge. I would think, boy, like would I ever think to write a book about my story? I mean, TJ tells me I should all the time. He's like, dude, you literally lived so many different lives. Like you got to talk about this. And I'm like, yeah, I'll talk about it. I'm willing to do
Yeah.
that. Taking
Yeah.
the time to really go inward and write a book. I mean, I feel like I live in that space every day. I don't
Yeah.
know if I think that's worthy, but I love it for you. And I think you have something to share. And I mean, your podcast and the stories that you're cultivating and the dialogue that you create is giving folks a good spark of inspiration. And I think that that's needed. And so seeing it in written form, I mean, you sold a copy over here, so that's easy.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and even that's like a good like reframe right there of like there's actually I have like two book ideas on like starting a business that I'm not passionate about, but I kind of just want to get out. That's something I would totally just like voice note, have someone ghostwrite, like like edit. You
There
know,
you go.
this is more. I'm a physical person, right? It's funny. I am like in I'm not a materialist at all when it comes to buying things, but I realize I'm a materialist in that I live in a material world. Like the way I express myself is physically, and I'm not trying to, I am progressing to go inwards more. And that's what this is like to write, 250-page book and edit
Yeah.
it and like go through these stories is like a challenge and a creative endeavor that like I haven't really, taken on. It's just gonna like be a growth experiment for me. So it'll be fun. And by the way, I'm on TJ's side. You got to write a book, man. We'll
All
send
right,
this
all right, dude.
recording.
We can revisit this one. Let's get through Q1 of 2024. We'll pick it back up as a
Yeah.
dialogue. And yes, I understand. I do understand that there's a lot of stuff out there. Now, kind of jumping all the way back, just because we mentioned it, sometimes that sourcing and integrity can also create something polarizing. And I've learned that in the food space that you are never going to make everybody happy. And that's a really funny thing. So collagen, we've talked about, and I think we've locked that one up in terms of like what it does for you. Everybody should be on collagen. If you're over 25, you should be taking collagen every day. Period. Check. Go. Um, I don't care what brand you take. I mean, I love it if it's ours and you feel connected to what we do, but just for your health, it should be a part of your daily routine. And there's so much research on why your body doesn't have collagen as much in your 30s as your 20s and your 40s and your 50s, and how it just goes down every year. You should read about that and learn about this glue holding your whole body together and how you need to have it in your system. Then you've got your favorite product, our creamer, the MCT oil powder. So, real quick, for anyone who doesn't know, MCT stands for medium chain triglyceride. Essentially, that is coconut oil, not palm oil, bad for the environment, coconut oil broken down from a long chain fatty acid to a medium chain, smaller fatty acid, medium chain triglyceride. That smaller, more absorbable fatty acid, that MCT, breaks through the blood-brain barrier and your brain eats it for food. So think mental sharpness, mental focus. You're just a little bit more alert. And your body is using that healthy fat for energy. So you got energy for hours. There's gut health benefits, there's additional benefits behind it, but really just think about I'm going to be a little bit smarter and I'm going to have a ton more energy by taking coconut oil broken into an MCT. So our approach on that was super simple. Most MCTs that I would find in oil form taste horrible. It just doesn't taste good. It's an oil slick. And most MCT oil powders, you take the oil and you just spray it into a powder. Cornstarch is commonly used. Acacia fiber is commonly used. They taste like SHIT. They just taste bad. So flavor is super important. If you think people should use a healthy habit, you got to make it attainable. And flavor was key. So I'm like, well, what do I like in a creamer? Visually, I like it to look creamy. Well, acacia doesn't look creamy. It looks like dark brown mud. Cornstarch looks horrible and it clumps. So we picked tapioca. It's cassava root. That's all it is, cassava root. Take cassava root, spray coconut oil onto it, and you've got a root vegetable, little cassava root, and you've got coconuts. Combine 2 ingredients. That's it. And you've got MCT oil powder that is creamy, delicious, tastes good on the mouth, like it's satiating, it's full, and you get all these great energy benefits from it. So that was our approach there. Simplicity had to win with benefits. Like you got to win and it's got to taste great. Now, subjective things. We go into electrolytes after that. We're all fired up. We've talked to our customer base, our consumers, our BUBS family, and they tell us they really want us to make an electrolyte. And I'm like, well, what's the BUBS lens on electrolytes? It's got to be as natural as can be. So I had this little buzz rattling around in my head, this little phrase, electrolytes from nature. And I was like, okay, like there's brands out there like Liquid IV. They've got 14 grams of sugar per serving, like 15 different ingredients in there, and it tastes like an absolute nuclear fruit bomb. But it's about 950 milligrams of electrolytes in there. I'm like, okay, I know we can deliver twice the electrolytes with a third of the ingredients, half the sugar. How do we do it? Let's go. But that's a tough ask. Let's go get after it. So we found a source for organic, USDA organic certified evaporated coconut water, Himalayan salt. You put those two ingredients together in the right ratio, you got 2,000 milligrams of electrolytes. You get potassium, chloride, sodium from two things ripped directly from nature. I was like, man, that's Bubs. Like, that's us. That's it. Super simple. We added lemon oil and organic stevia as the flavor roundup, and a little bit of magnesium in there because, you know, it's a nice roundup in the electrolyte profile. I'm like, okay, we got literally 6 ingredients on a label, no added sugar. It's the right flavor. We all thought it was delicious. Ship this thing out to market. We love it. We start getting feedback from people that love it. We named the product Hydrate or Die. I literally had so much fun with it. Like, here you go. You know, BUBS Naturals, Hydrate or Die, because, you know, we're a fun brand. We're trying to have some fun with it. And it's a love-hate relationship. It's too salty for some people. They're like, oh, it tastes too salty. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, this is as clean and natural an electrolyte as you can get. Like, this is it. And you get sports performance folks that are like, they love it. They're like, this is exactly what we needed. There's no extra BS in it. The whole line is NSF for Sports certified. Our coconut flavor is, get this, Whole30 approved, certified USDA organic, and NSF for Sports certified. It's effectively an unflavored electrolyte coconut water. And it's been amazing to launch. And it's been amazing in a very different way to catch the polarizing feedback that comes from a product like that, because people expect fruit bombs. They expect this flavor bomb. And I'm like, no, no, no. This is about human performance. This is about clean ingredients and integrity. And I've learned a big lesson on that one. Like, okay, people want you to make it a lot sweeter.
Yeah. You know, first of all, I really do take all those, and it's funny because naturally, right? I'm an athlete, so I'm like, yeah, sports performance, that's me. In reality, I'm not an athlete, right? I run a marketing company, and I like to work out and do a lot of sports. And I think sometimes like people shouldn't be scared to like consider themselves like an athlete or like, you know, I feel like take what you're doing seriously. Like I'm really trying to, like, I am a professional athlete, because why not? Like, it's our bodies that we're talking about. It's something that everyone should care about.
If you're going to
But
show up, do the work.
yeah,
The gym
right.
work, right? I'll call it work. Show up. Like, you're going to be there. You're going to go for a run. It doesn't mean you got to run a 5K in PR, but put one foot in front of the other and get the job done. Well, why wouldn't you treat your body, whether you're a casual, you know, I'm going to do a 30-minute Les Mills class at the YMCA. It doesn't matter. Like, do that. That's amazing. That is awesome. You don't have to be the intense podium finishing CrossFit athlete to have a lens on nutrition. Treat your body like what it is. Is it a temple or is it a tent? In my 20s, it was a tent. In my
Yeah.
50s, it's a temple. You know what I mean? Like, just like shift your perspective and be like, why don't I put good nutrition in my body? Why don't I get whole foods in my system? Why don't I make good choices on what I'm ingesting so that I can feel really good about that in life? Be a pro
For,
athlete. Be a pro
yeah,
athlete in
treat
your
yourself
head.
like,
Treat yourself well, man.
love it, right? And like, you know, the flavor profile thing is something interesting, because I've been eating in treating yourself well. So you get rid of the highly palatable foods, and you know, now like there's like a lot of stuff that I used to like eat or drink like is so like sugary and flavorful. Like, dude, I can't even drink a Gatorade. Like, it's like nauseating to drink to me. It's like it's like it literally just tastes like chemicals. Like, as I'm like sipping it, my body like I, I haven't had one in maybe 3 years, and I remember the last one I was kind of like my body's just instantly just like, this isn't right. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
something like there's just too much concentration here. And like my body like almost rejected it. And in doing so, like when you really become like a little more in tune with the body, which I don't want to say I am, but I'm on that journey. What I've noticed with the electrolytes, like when I drink it, like I like feel it like into my arms, like into my body, and I just like there's just like higher level of energy,
Yes.
similar to the energy I get with the MCT oil, which is
But
cool because yeah,
different, right? Like
different.
one is
Yes,
just like energy over time. that like you just sort of have it. It's like a baseline. And then electrolytes, especially around activity, you're just like ready to go, but not in a
Yeah.
jittery way. It's just like you're just, well,
That,
electrified.
electrified. That's what I was going to say, is not in a jittery way. So, I like, and a lot of people, like when I tell them about MCT oil energy, they're like, oh, like coffee. I'm like, no, that's like this, like, not that coffee's bad, but it's like an artificial, not like you're like adding energy versus like, you know, like MCT is just like, it's like, damn, did I sleep good today? Or like, why am I just sharp all day? Like,
Yeah.
um, and then, when I get like such a big feeling like that, the first thing I did was like, I'm going back to the ingredients because I'm assuming there's something wrong. And, saw your ingredients and I was down. And, that's kind of why I stuck around on the customer side.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's the best proof in the pudding, right? The best relationships are like, this was built over time. We were going to meet sooner or later because the fitness space, the wellness space, nutrition space, like sooner or later we'd bump into each other. But having you discover the brand in your own voyage of trying to treat your body better is the best proof. And like, it just sets the stage for something amazing. So like, yeah, we're psyched. And,
I
our
appreciate it.
approach on all of our product line and kind of our roadmap moving forward is consistent. Just improve, take in the lessons that life is offering you. I got data from a lot of our customers on electrolytes. Cool. I know that our collagen line is, rock solid, move it forward, keep it going, double down on the relationships with the best suppliers on the planet, and, treat your creamer like the heaven that it is, because it's part of your daily ritual and it's part of that beautiful routine, and make that magic happen and lean into it. So, and we're psyched to have you guys as a partner on that journey, because I love knowing that we can take our voice and these mottos and expressions that we have: live better longer, die young as late as possible, feel
That's
great,
my
do good, like all that stuff. And it's in good hands. And you guys are going to find the right personalities out there that are going to share that likeness and that message. Like, goes way beyond. Like Eric Hinman is a great example of, this dude in his 30, I'm sorry, in his 40s now, who is living it. Like, he lives what he talks about.
yeah.
And there's so many good people in our world that want to make those positive changes and can talk about it well. And, it's just cool. It's a cool partnership to have. So we're psyched to be here.
Dude, I'm psyched to be here too, and I do feel like we can let this one go all day. But let's wrap it up on die young as late as possible, because that's actually, I got to tell you one thing. I was listening to a podcast that talked about age as this, like, metaphor basically, and they said they view someone's physical age and mental age, and the mental age is how frequently someone is talking about the future versus like the past. And for some reason, when I heard that, I started thinking about the die young as late as possible, because that's what I was thinking. It's like, my uncle is this. My uncle's 65 and he's starting a new band, and he's like, dude, I think in the next 2 or 3 years we could start touring. And I'm like, you're the coolest fucking person ever. Like, like just the fact that you're thinking about this, you're like 10x anyone else that's 65. And I get it. And Shaun, one thing that I wrote down early that I just wanted to thank you for was that story I said in the beginning about, hey, there's two things that drew me to Bub. One was a 10%. I told that story because you talked about passing it down. The other was, and I'll keep this brief, was I first met with TJ. I was talking with Lexi. We got, to be friendly. And she's like, hey, TJ's in Denver. I was like, I'd love to take him out for lunch. I get in this text thread with him. He goes, no, coffee. I got 15 minutes. I'm like, cool. We sit down. 4.5 hours later, I've went through 3 journals of notes on just like everything he's talking about. And it was him just like, hey, I see someone else that's like in this marketing world, has a passion for fitness, wellness, outdoors. And it was just him giving us value and energy. And on our first calls, I've got the same exact thing from you. So I just wanted to thank you and the whole BUBS family, because like I feel like you guys are like, let's bring people in that we like, and like just pass like mentorship down to them. You talked about mentors that you had in your career at Burton and all over. And I truly feel that way. And that's, something I don't want to take advantage of from a time standpoint, but I do want to let you know that like, I do look at you and TJ as like mentors in the health and wellness entrepreneurial space. And yeah, it does mean a lot. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, man. That means the world to me. And I mean, I'll just thank you from TJ. He wouldn't do it if he didn't think you were worth investing the time in. Like that's key to us. Like it's key to us
Yeah.
to know that the people we work with, where we want to put our energy is worth it. And hopefully there's that's reciprocated, that folks feel that they want to put our energy into what we're doing. So thank you. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, man. Thanks. Dude, have an amazing Friday. Hopefully you get out and surf or whatever you want to do this weekend. And I'm excited for us to talk again soon.
Nice. Likewise, you have an epic weekend, and we'll catch up soon.
Thanks. Hey, thank you for watching today's episode. If you got something out of this, it would mean so much if you could just take a second and give us a rating on whatever platform you're watching it on. And it would mean so much to the world if you could just find one person that you think this message resonates with and you could share that with them. Thank you so much for your support. Looking forward to share the next episode with you.